jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Three, two, one. Oh, it's always a hell on earth just setting up the recording because we gotta try and get room tone, and yet the room tone is more trouble than it's worth, and yet here we are, folks. Ladies
Why
and
am I
gents,
turning red?
I don't know. We humor each other. Dina and I are here to lead another brigade. That's right, guys. We're getting political, talking about political fiction. Yeah. How are you, Dina?
Jack done. I'm doing good.
Dun,
How
dun.
about you?
Dina the dinosaur
Jack
from
done.
your imagination. I am doing great, and we will be discussing Designated Survivor and Madam Secretary, also known as Madam President, and the shows they were inspired by and have pretty much inspired. So, and it still is entertaining. I've had people who've gotten into these shows because they're on Netflix and you can binge them. So let's go with the first one. Technically the more popular one. Yeah, the other one was kind of first, but yeah, let's go with Designated Survivor, where we talk about President Tom Kirkman, who was formerly in the Office of Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and tries to run
Somehow.
after
got
the
saddled.
Capitol. Right. Before you can say Air Force One or Olympus has fallen, the whole fucking place has just come down. They got to rebuild it before there's all this other tyranny and World War III starts. And before you can say, damn it, Jack Bauer on 24, Kiefer Sutherland's the one casted here. It was created by David Guggenheim, who had written movies like the Nick Cage Suckfest, Stolen, as well as the 2012 Denzel Washington movie Safe House. He is going to be next writing movies like the Uncharted video game adaptation.
Which is Tom Holland.
I believe so, yes. It also stars The Truman Show's Natasha McElhone as the First Lady, Alex. It stars Adam Kento from the Following and X-Men movies as Aaron Shore, who is the first chief of staff before becoming the vice president-elect. Waking Life's Ataya Rishi as the spokesperson, who later becomes chief of staff. LaMonica Garrett from The Last Ship as Secret Service agent Mike Ritter in the first two seasons, and the main, protective detail. And Tanner Buchanan as Leo, the president's oldest son, who's got to try and apply for Stanford University. How I Met Your Mothers, and Harold and Kumar's Cal Penn as Seth Wright, the communications director, who in real life had actually worked
At the White House.
yeah,
Absolutely.
writing speeches for Barack Obama, the actual president. And Nikita and Die Hard 4's Maggie Q as Hannah Wells, FBI special agent who's framed for an assassination and later becomes a CIA case officer. So the show is produced by Mark Gordon from such blockbusters as Criminal Minds and Speed and Saving Private Ryan. So you're in good hands. You pick some good shit. There's a reason Grey's Anatomy's been on for 15 plus years, right?
Only you. Only you.
I don't watch it. Also stars Jake Epstein from Degrassi The Next Generation as FBI analyst. I almost said it the wrong way. Royal Pains, Paulo Costanzo as the White House political director, who's socially inept, and JAG and NCIS New Orleans, Zoe McClellan as the White House counsel, a no-nonsense attorney who formerly worked in Homeland Security Subcommittee, and the British Lord Ben Lawson as Damien Rennett, an MI6 agent who may or may not be a traitor.
People should know what designated survivor is. Like, so basically,
It's a real
from what
thing,
I
guys.
understood it, if nobody
Based
knows
on
what
a real
designated
thing.
survivor is, if nobody knows what a designated survivor is, it's basically they pick somebody, and it's basically like a jackpot of names. They pick out one name out of this huge, like, bucket of names, and who basically stays behind while everybody else goes to.
Just like
The
I
White
say when someone is a B-movie actor who has to star in all the bad movies, somebody's got to do it.
Someone has to do it.
Somebody's got to do it.
So basically, him being the U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, he got that job basically as a crapshoot, and he gets to stay behind. And next thing you know, there's a big kablooey, and he's basically the next in line to be emergency president. And that's the whole point of the designated survivors. So that way, if something does happen, everything collapses, they have somebody they can use to continue with our government infrastructure so that it doesn't fall apart.
Totally. And the fact that I think this is the way you got to do it. Is like, if people don't want to learn about because they hate how the world is run and everything, they should still at least see it in entertainment before they just write it off.
Absolutely. And then this actually shows what could happen. I mean, if shit does go down and we're stuck with some designated survivor and it happens to be the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development who has zero. No, let me rephrase that.
Zero qualifications.
-15. -15 qualifications. Not zero. This is like below zero qualification to do this job. It's in the middle of the night. He gets sworn in. All of a sudden, he's now acting president, and this is without any kind of reelection or anything like that. I believe he is up for reelection after he becomes that. But it's kind of like that idea of what would really happen if this went down. So I did appreciate that they went there. And it shows you this person who's basically bumbling and stumbling and figuring out the best that he can because he has no choice but to do it. He's
totally.
oath.
And so she's pretty much hinted at the overall style of this, why this works so well. You instantly get the whole now we're living large, we're basically, privileged, we're rich, and we need this because he was technically about to be out of a job anyway. That's the other irony. He was going to technically have to step down and be fired because, the powers that be. And so here you go. How he's got, like you say, he's got so much to weigh in. He's like, I've always wanted to have a good political career, but I didn't think it happened under this circumstances. No one wants millions to be killed.
Now everyone's looking at you for answers. You're like, maybe it has something to do with housing or urban development. I can help you there. And also, he used to be in the limelight. Someone who's just a United States Secretary of something that simple, they don't really get the limelight. So now it's not just him; it's his family too.
Totally. Paul Redford is an executive producer on this and contributed a bunch of ideas and writing to this. He had previously, been one of the head writers on West Wing and later worked on Madam Secretary at around the same time. So a lot of the castmates have been on Kiefer's previous show, 24. And so I'll bring you to the ultimate question. Is this the better show or is 24 more entertaining? Because it's kind of a dark place. I'm going to watch 24 all the time. And at the same time, I feel like this is more mature. Like this is way more mysterious and calculated.
24 is kind of like Blind Spot in the fact that every day there's something going on. I'm not saying Designated Survivor isn't like that, but Designated Survivor Designated Survivor has that slow build. There's a lot of conversation going on. There's a lot of politics at play. There's a lot of conversation happening.
Yeah, it's
While
got
as
action and
Jack
drama.
Bauer 24,
Yeah.
it's like bam, 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 the end. You know, and it's a lot of action. Now,
And
this show
Redford.
isn't a lot of action, but it's in that kind of West Wing kind of action. It's a Madame Secretary kind of action.
Yeah, totally. Kind of Born Identity kind of action, somewhat. Yeah, especially with Hannah Wells. Like, she's the main gal doing the action, where she must find the perpetrators and get her FBI guys to sign off before she goes rogue. But they do a good job of even showing her go rogue to make up for the implausibility, because they also, like you say, I mean, a president wouldn't be thinking about whether or not he would be getting assassinated. He's got to be thinking about, how do I rebuild, and how do I, put up with all these other
I
politicians.
need answers to also appease the people.
Appease
And
the people.
I can't do that without sending somebody to go rogue, Maggie Q, to get that information. And he knows
Totally.
he can trust her to not be with everybody else who basically doesn't want anything to do with what's happening. They,
Absolutely.
they want you to fail. And how's the best way? Like, well, where's our answers? Well, let me get some answers, but I know you're not going to sanction it, so I'm going to fucking do it on the DL. So there was a lot of learning for him. In the beginning, he was a lot of stumbling. The second season, he kind of got a little bit better. And then by the third season, he got so confident. It was like not the same president.
It was really good
character
evolution.
from the first one. Absolutely.
Because he's good at giving a speech.
Right? You're unsure. You're
Right.
unsure as fuck.
He's good at giving a speech, but he's not good at holding back his patience, especially when he takes the bait where they bring up, oh, you just got here because of this, or, and I, without giving it away, when the tragedy that happens to him happens,
Right.
then he gets
Right.
even more pissed. And I was so
Right.
pissed too, because I
And
knew,
he was like so over it. I don't blame him.
well, and the media sucked on this when campaigning for this
Oh,
show,
yeah.
because this was a hit for ABC, and yet they just
Yeah.
weren't satisfied with the ratings. They wanted to get rid of it, but because it
Right.
was expensive or some shit. But then the person who was on the show was given away as to what show they were going to, and it was like, fuck, I already know that they're gonna die, because it's just that's what happens when you go to another show. They have to just write in something like tragic like that. But it was really cool too that it happened, because then the stakes raised. Then it became an instant manhunt, and then it became, now we got to do another manhunt while you have, again, bills trying to get passed. And just this whole cast just clicked with each other. They really, they did have quite a lot of humor. And it's just like, it's not enough to make it a comedy, but it's enough to make it a very intriguing drama. And it's like, yeah, this is pretty badass.
No, absolutely. And I actually really like, we were talking about like the evolution, and
Mhm.
when things are happening the way they're happening, it makes sense that he's acting the way he is. And that's
Right.
what made it feel that realistic portion of it. Because when I watch Madam Secretary, it's good. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely
Oh, yeah.
appreciated that show. But at the same time,
It's kind of more of a comedy
there
drama.
were some pieces that were a little far-fetched to me, a little
Right.
too, making her more important than she really was. Does that make sense?
There was that, and my mother often complained about how it's like, why are all the kids up? They wouldn't be up. They'd be sleeping or taking sweet time eating their breakfast. So
I mean, they were like waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning,
maybe
and then they were like going to bed like at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, seriously?
maybe they had time to, I don't know. Maybe they gotta come late to school because I'm I'm a senator turned president's daughter or son.
And
I
I also didn't like the children aspect of it for both. So for the first one, for Designated Survivor,
That's a good
the
point.
the kid acting are good on both, but I feel like because they lived a very humble life, the kids were so kind of humbled themselves.
They
Well,
were
Madame
instantly
Secretary,
spoiled, but yeah.
yeah,
mean,
but Madame
'cause-
Secretary, they were already spoiled from like the beginning, and they acted like spoiled
true.
brats.
I totally
You know.
concur. The acting is very competent by all. They've all been very good American and Canadian actors who've been in a lot of movies and shows in either key roles and acclaimed short films. And it's just that, yeah, the Designated did a really good job of just not doing what most shows, just having just waiting for the boredom to elapse or waiting for something to get too silent. Just like they knew the minute something got just too self-indulgent, this was going to be it. They were going to lose their audience. So they did a really good job. It's like mix in, are the kids going to be in jeopardy or not, or just keep an eye on them, and focus mainly on the president, him gaining the trust, and doing all the other just, foreign affairs and compromises that you just can't possibly make to please everybody. And yeah, and Madam kind of just, because it was kind of more of a comedy drama, it kind of worked for a while because, again, just, Henry, her husband, was just witty and kind of caring for him. And but yeah, it wasn't self.
So I can't.
Totally.
I enjoyed him. When I saw that he was playing an ex-pilot, I'm like, that's funny.
Right. Totally.
So that was kind of cool. From wings type of thing. A lot of people didn't recognize him, but being the, because her being Madame Secretary, he'd be like not first husband, but like, what do they call him? I forgot.
First gentleman or some shit like that.
First gentleman. That's what it was. It was first gentleman because that's what he is.
That's how fancy it was. But yeah.
Right. But it was kind of like they put a lot of attention to him and to her. And honestly, as we've been seeing the news today, do we really even know who the hell freaking the Secretary of State is? I know I don't. I don't know who that is. So I kind of feel like they're giving too much glory to a position that no one really pays attention to.
It did get a little.
I'm not saying it's not important.
Yeah, I know.
It's not important.
I know what you meant. And sometimes they would act like everyone's going to strike out towards her, and it's like, yeah, no, they're not focused on that.
Like she saved the world 1,000 times because of what she was doing, and those speeches were that important. And I'm like, are they though? Are they? I'm not saying the job is not important, but I just didn't believe it as reality as I did with Designated Survivor. I feel like with that show,
and that says a lot when Designated.
Those expectations are like, oh shit, that's what I can believe that actually happened. I can see this actually going down. I can actually understand where he's coming from. With her, it was more like, oh, well, I used to be a super secret spy who now has a job as Madame Secretary because I'm besties with the president now. I mean, come on.
It's a lot to take in. It kind of helped
it's a lot to take in.
She was CIA, and you can kind of, it was inspired by Madeleine, is it Albright is her name? The one Congresswoman. And it was interesting too how, again, just you could tell, the kids went different directions, so they were productive and everything, but at the same time, it's like they did start out pretty whiny at first, where it's like, okay, thank God they changed it up in the name of comedy, because otherwise it would have just been sheer torture hearing them, complain.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, getting back to a little bit to Designated, I guess you can definitely say that they kind of just keep it simplified, and they kind of do a good job, like they do kind of on Law and Order, where it's like, okay, here's a legal battle, let's address it. Here's all the different sides you need to know of it, and each character represents that idea. Like, I disagree with it, but I'm representing you, Mr. President, so therefore, my opinion is relevant. Best keep my integrity. And then there's all this other stuff where it's like, Mr. President, respectfully, you suck. Stuff like that.
I know. I'm like, can you even say that? Like,
yeah, I'm sure they say it. The media's not looking at them, but yeah, there's plenty of stuff like that where it's just like, yeah, okay, so this show's not holding back from being pretty blunt. So I definitely don't think it's playing it safe.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't feel like you're being lied to, like you might see. Whether we like a politician or not, they're gonna say something, to the camera. So it's like, okay, it's cool just seeing the, brace for impact. And it's like, ooh, is this going to go down well? Is this not? And just seeing everyone, of course, just like on West Wing, just react to it over, just seeing the live TV broadcast. And of course, we're human. We're going to forget to say one quick thing. And then there's a quick rescue. Oh, that wasn't in the speech, but that worked even better. I pointed him in the right direction.
Better. Yeah, we meant to do that. Yeah.
I'll take credit for it. I'll take it. So yeah, a lot of Kiefer's 24 co-stars are on here. One of the co-conspirators is Peter Outerbridge, playing the guy Charles. He's been on a bunch of stuff also with Nikita with Maggie Q, and he's on all the superhero shows and other stuff like The Expanse. Malik Yoba from New York Undercover and Revolution is here as the former deputy FBI director. Kevin McNally, who you might know as Elizabeth's father in Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and the show Turn is here. Virginia Madsen from Candyman and Sideways is here as the Speaker of the House, who totally disagrees with the president on everything in the first few seasons. And we got a bunch of other people here. Bubba from Forrest Gump, that's right, McKelty Williamson, who was previously on 24 in Touch, plays one of the admirals on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Reed Diamond from Homicide is the former FBI director. And Rob Morrow, who I hear is an asshole in real life from Numbers and Northern Exposure, is here as a journalist. And Jeff Pearson, who was one of the brief presidents on 24, plays a former president here. You guys might know him as one of the cops on Dexter. And Jamie Clayton, who's a real transgendered actress, plays the president's sister-in-law. You might know her from Sense 8.
Yeah, she was amazing.
Really,
She was
really
so
wonderful.
amazing.
Anthony Edwards later plays the final chief of staff from ER, and it made sense to me because at that point the head showrunner, they did a really damn good job changing showrunners. I didn't know who wrote what. It just was they were all speaking the same language.
It was very fluid. It
Right.
was so fluid. And that's the thing I don't know about you, but like with Madame Secretary, you can tell that there's different writers for different episodes.
I couldn't tell, but I could definitely tell what storylines were just loose, what they weren't good at. Is like, okay, doesn't work that way in the real world, but whatever. And speeches, yeah, you guys are really good at speeches, so that's why I keep coming back for more. But yeah, it made sense that Anthony Edwards.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie on that. Hell yeah, those speeches were like, whoa. Especially Designated Survivor speeches. I feel like they were really motivating, like ridiculously motivating.
Okay. Absolutely. But yeah, the final showrunner had worked on ER, and he said in an interview, is like, we got to keep the show trickling. Someone's got to lose something. Otherwise, it's just rendered, false. They have Anawan Ellis, who many might know from The Help, Men of Honor, Ben Carson Story, Steve Harris's ex on The Practice, and When They See Us, and currently Lovecraft Country. But she is badass here as the vice president turned opponent of the president. On Designated, we have Kiefer's buddy and former movie co-star Michael J. Fox playing opposing attorney Ethan West. We have Kim Raver, also known as Jack Bauer's former, love interest, Kim Raver, here as aerospace engineer who's wants to date the president, but has to is presumed to dump that romantic relationship when it turns out her interests might compromise what he stands for. We have Breckenmeyer, that's right, the comedic actor, as Trey, the president's estranged younger brother.
That's right. He plays a finance guy, right?
Absolutely. Then we have Kieran Giovanni, that's right, the gorgeous Italian black actress from who many might know as Detective Sykes on the closer continuation Major Crimes. She plays the Senate Majority Leader, who in 2 key episodes plays, shows how she's from Massachusetts and might be their only hope of breaking a bunch of ties in the Senate. And last and final, I swear, of all these characters, we got Terry Serpico, stuntman turned actor who many might know from other shows like Army Wives. I definitely recognize him from one of the henchmen in Born Ultimatum. I think he gets run over. You will also recognize
Best way to
him.
remember somebody.
Yeah, totally. You'll recognize he's been on all the Law and Orders multiple times, most recently in a recurring one as one of the chiefs who wants everyone to turn in their badges. he had a recurring gangster role on Person of Interest. He was in the Purge election year as one of the opponents, I think. And then he was also in other blockbusters like The Interpreter and Departed and Find Me Guilty. So he's been around quite a while. But yeah.
Very cool.
But it's just so funny. The entire time my mother's like, Anthony Michael Hall is evil. I'm like, that's not Anthony Michael Hall, but I understand he does look like him. But I promise you, and she just didn't believe me until I showed her the IMDb page. I'm like, okay, yes, he looks similar, but he's clearly way much younger than Anthony.
Hey now.
I'm not hating him. I love the Dead Zone and 16 Candles, but no, that's not him. He's really cool because he is part of the shady company Browning Reed, one of the former chiefs of that company, and forms the terrorist group, the True Believers, the real culprits behind the Capitol attack. Once you're figured out who the main two culprits, who designed the blueprints, who carried out the attack that killed 1,000+ people, maybe more like 1,200. I forget the number. And then he, by season 2, becomes the main villain because Serpico's character, Patrick Lloyd, just, he is a madman. He locks himself up in a bunker and is threatens to unleash, a bio, weapon, some sarin gas that'll kill thousands. And
why not?
Yeah, because before you get to season 3, where you don't really know who the real people are until midway through, and it's like a disease that will affect minorities, which is even more frightening, especially seeing just, how much white supremacist stuff we're seeing nowadays. And, the show is so ahead of its time in terms of just showcasing the terrorism and making it entertaining in terms of just, how will we get the bad guys? And, even when they figure out the main thing to do, nothing is ever over. And Kiefer has the final great line in the final scene of the movie as President Kirkman by saying is like, I've now become everything I hate, a politician. Because here he is trying to be...
That was a hard-hitting comment because it's not that he never wanted to do it. Like I said, he got into it, then he became president, and he was trying to figure it out. And all of a sudden he's like, fuck me.
And I really did buy... Well, totally. And I mean, and like you say, Madam Secretary, also a cool show, but a lot more to buy into, especially when she runs as an independent. They never... And her predecessor before does that too, just so that, they don't have a conversation about who are you really. And
they stay away from like the hard-hitting politics, like kind of
so
like staying neutral. While in Designated Survivor, I kind of felt like, no, you have to pick a side.
Yeah, and that was what was really cool is like he's clearly got a progressive background and he wants to appease the conservatives. And Madam President, kind of like you say, they didn't get it as complicated, so it was a lot to buy into. And this one, you kind of bought into more just because it's like this is all they have left. They'll take the people will take whatever they love at this point,
Correct.
And they do a good job. And this is where the other show suffers. They don't show them connecting with the people here. They, I think it helped that Kiefer had been untouched and he had, his show kind of dealt with people reacting to stuff from around the world.
Thank you. I actually was saying how much he reminded me of the character in text, the way he spoke. The way he delivered his lines was very much like in that show.
Oh, totally.
But I felt like he was the same guy. I almost expected to see his kid there because it just felt like the same.
He needs
style.
A supernatural kid to help him find out the riddles.
Hey, bro, with everything that was going on, he needed that help, okay? He needed every person's help.
I kept waiting for ABC to get bought by Fox a few years earlier, so that way then we would have an actual 24 Designated Survivor crossover. He hires Jack
Bauer. It would happen.
And
like,
they'd have
Jack,
to apply
what
makeup.
are you doing here?
Mr. President, if you don't like my methods, get someone else. I'm done. No, I need you. No.
That would be so weird.
You just see Abram show up from Touch.
There you go. It just...
What's the kid doing here? Get him. Save him now. We need him.
No. I mean, it was just, he does deliver lines like that, though. I mean, he's not Jack Bauer he's its own character, but he did definitely take a lot from Touch, and he brought it into that.
I
and that
actually tried to recommend it to my uncle who was a fan of West Wing. He's like, does Kiefer do his usual mumbling, like, you know, because that's the thing, is like everyone on 24 talks like the people on X-Files, where it's like, and then everything gets loud all of a sudden when there's an explosion or someone being attacked.
Yeah, the volume at like 100, and then like explosions happens, you're like, ah!
And unfortunately, I have pretty sympathetic people in the room, and they admit it. It's like, we have subtitles, and we're still barely making out what Michael J. Fox is saying. It's like,
hey, Designated Survivor, everything I show has to have subtitles, because I could have my
they're talking really fast, yeah.
They're talking really fast, and you're trying to catch everything, and then all of a sudden there's explosions.
But it's the best kind, though.
Okay.
It is the best kind.
Yeah, it is.
Never
it's
in the
not
best.
Out of nowhere, though. It never feels out of place. It always feels like that makes sense. Yeah.
Never. It's not like in Batman and Superman where you're like, why does this have to do with politics? And because I don't know what's going on, I'm losing interest fast.
No, and everything that's happening in every episode, it does carry on through the season.
Absolutely.
Through the seasons. And
Free good
so you
seasons.
basically can follow along. I really feel like you can really follow with everything that's coming up and everything that happens. I do feel like this is more of a, you do need to pay attention. You do need to keep watching everything, because I feel like if you miss an episode, you're not gonna get it if you miss something important. Now, while Madam Secretary / President, you kind of can miss a few episodes,
you can miss a bunch.
Not towards the last few seasons though. Like the last 3, you do have to pay attention, because that's when her kids get more involved with her and what she's doing, as well as her husband and what he's doing. And if you don't pay attention to, if there's some things that you can miss, like in the middle, but as it starts getting more involved with her family, you can't miss it just because of what happens at the end for her. So while Designated Survivor, you have to watch every episode from the very beginning in order for you not to get lost.
Absolutely. Because, like you say, I mean, Madam was kind of more about, you know, just various things going on, and I have a key role, and, you know, I can take credit for everyone else looking good. And this is more, everybody is worried about their own image, you know, and they do really good at, you know, doing the stuff that's inevitable that they almost always do, where there's a big, you know, implausible assassination or a, you know, workplace romance without feeling like a soap opera or, you know, Red Shoe Diaries or some other bullshit. It's like, it's really good. You know what?
Now that you said that, weren't there some parts on Madame Secretary that felt a little telenovela?
Probably with Stevie, and we'll get to it in a minute. We got so much to come.
Oh my God, yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. Because, okay, now Designated Survivor kind of went there in a couple episodes dealing with his oldest kid and what happened to him, but that helped with the arc of the story. Well, I feel like Secretary was more like, oh, just stop, just shut up already.
They would, especially the son who drove me and my mother crazy. He's like, oh my God.
You too, right? You too?
Such a brat. Yeah. And
I like the little girl. I did.
Well, yeah, because she was the only one who you're like, I can take her serious. I can tell she's fed up and wants to do something in life and make her parents happy, and at the same time make herself happy. And it's like, she's the only one who has a voice. And I get it that they're trying to be kind of plausible. There's probably a lot of, you know, president's kids that are stuck up, but like Designated did it better because it wouldn't take up the whole episode. It would take up 10 to 20 minutes. And then next thing, then you're back
quick, I have a kid. Remind you I have a kid. I'm a parent, but I'm also a president. While Secretary towards the last 3 seasons, it was all about
the kids.
Her kids. And I get that they're part of your life.
And the Russians.
Every day you would see them.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, that made no sense how Stevie got involved with that. That became so novela. To me, that was completely unnecessary, but I felt like, oh my God, we need something. So let's just make up something.
He was a handsome
We're gonna
dude,
throw the Russians in there. I'm like, seriously?
He was a handsome dude, but there were other times where he's like, man, he's also such a glutton for punishment. Doesn't he know the Russians can't follow him?
He was a good actor. He was a fantastic actor.
Everybody's good on both these shows, but yeah, it's just like, and even Rob Morrow,
but the fact was that it just got too involved. It was too involved. It was too much, and it became really like soapy. And I was like, oh my God, this is almost going to end. So I have to stick through it. While Designated Survivor, I'm like, give me more. I want more. I want another season. I want more episodes.
Both these shows had networks that didn't appreciate them because this is like, it should have been, Designated should have been on Netflix from the very get-go.
I agree.
And I had to kick up on, I run a political fiction group. And, I always play referee when it gets out of hand. And there was a bunch of neo-Nazis saying, oh, Designated becomes too PC in the last, season. I'm like, fuck you. Dealt with LGBT. I don't like it.
No, if you want PC,
language.
That's Madam Secretary.
Right. Definitely not
Survivor.
Definitely not Designated, especially when there's using
it was just facts. It was just
language.
Shit you have to deal with. These are just shit that you have to work with.
It was raw. And
yeah.
And they did a good job too of just showing like people get exploited, getting into violent arguments about, especially with his chief of staff, Aaron, Shore doing the whole is like, I want to run as a president, but you only see me as an opportunity or as a Latino president, you motherfuckers. It's like, I'm not cool with that. And it was really cool how, what's her name? Who was just so good. You had the chief of staffs, having his distractions, he's so strict. And yet the only thing he doesn't have control over is his own troubled wife, played by Lauren Holly from NCIS and Dumb and Dumber. And how she was, addicted to opium.
She was actually quite wonderful.
She really was. Because it's like, it's just so ironic, he's got everything locked down. It's like, not how the president, you're going to answer to him and all that. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, or I'm going to fucking fire you. And then the only thing he can't control is, the war at home, which is making sure his wife's getting the right.
And then it becomes even more chaotic later on.
Yeah.
And you're like, bro, like you were so close to get everything. But of course, but reality though, dude, does anyone really have their shit down like that? No. Something's always going to pop up. Something's going to happen when you're like, fuck, I finally think I have my shit together. And then I have a flat tire. Or
right?
I just paid off my car and it broke down.
Totally.
That happened to me. I bought a car the next day. I got in a wreck.
Oh.
And I got I was completely trashed. I was out for like 2 weeks. I almost lost my job because of it. And I was just so happy and excited because I had just bought my house. And I bought my car. I went to Thanksgiving the next day. I left Thanksgiving, and boom! Right as I'm on my way to work. So,
oh my God,
that's reality. You think you finally have everything down like you're supposed to, and then something just smacks you. And that's how I felt with Designated Survivor, was that it was realistic. He finally had shit down. He had a war at home. Then all of a sudden, it's fucking disastrous. It's catastrophe, and you're dealing with opposition left and right, and you just want to have this shit down, and you just, for some reason, it will not do that. Madam Secretary,
and just when you think you feel, totally, because Madam would just wrap it all up and like, no,
yes,
million
and a
other
fucking
problems.
little bow tie, and I'm like, you can't
no,
do that.
Not how it goes.
Because what you just did is gonna come bite you in the ass.
And Designated would acknowledge is like, even other stuff they didn't show us, they're like, they would even just kind of joke and say, well, and now, the 12-year-olds fight amongst each other while we watch, or some shit like that. They would do stuff like, and now it's the world's problem, and we just take the credit for it, and it's like.
Because we both know that's fucking true. And with Madame Secretary, everything was in a boat. Now, there was one instance in one episode that something did bite him in the ass, that something that she did caused someone to basically throw an RPG at the Capitol. So
that was a great premiere because so we're getting into Madam.
Showed what happens if you don't actually fix things, or you say the wrong thing, or you don't close things off a little bow on top. Every episode always felt like, well, that was a wrap. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Both shows were filmed very much like West Wing and had the same kind of legal arguments like Law and Order, but when it got to all the attacks, you definitely felt like you were watching an episode of NCIS or something, just with how the Navy functions, the Joint Chiefs respond. Let's get to Madam here in just a bit. Let's wrap up this one last part. Designated. So What do you think of Julie White as Lorraine, the reelection campaign manager? How you don't know whether to trust her or not at the start, and you still don't, even as it goes on.
I still don't, especially
Yeah.
with everything that happens.
Right, especially
I-
with I knew she was up to no good, and that she was playing hardball, and it was like the only way he was going to win, so he needed her, and at the same time he had to put her on a leash, because this is like, man, this is like,
Because he knew that if he didn't put her on a leash, what was going to happen?
and for those who don't know, Julie White is a wonderful Tony-winning actress. You've seen her multiple times, and all the other sitcoms and multiple. You might, for those boomers, you might know her multiple times, being on Grace Under Fire and all the Law and Orders, but the rest of us know her for doing voiceovers like Monsters vs. Aliens and Inside Out, the DreamWorks and Pixar animated stuff. She's had recurring roles on Nurse Jackie, 6 Feet Under, and the political comedy Alpha House. So she knows her shit. She was dynamite. More mainstream might just know her as playing Shia's mom in those stupid Transformers movies, but like she just ate this up. Like she has the most, raunchy and messed up speeches, like ripping everyone a new one. Is like, hey, you should stop wearing that slut outfit, or you're at. I'm gonna rip you an ass from here to Kingdom Come if you don't let me do my thing. And it's just so wild how she can be a cutthroat 1 minute and then just want to eat lunch and dinner with the rest of them. It's like, what's wrong?
But you want to grab some tea after she just ripped you a new
Right.
asshole,
It was like, what? It's not how this works.
I absolutely love her, and yeah, she was great in Transformers 2 as playing the mom, and her.
She was hysterical.
I feel like she was the same actress though. I feel like she just went from like Transformers to this show,
Right.
playing the same person. She was raunchy. She was no nonsense. She was very loud, just like in Transformers. But she was also very matter of fact, like in Transformers. She had no shame.
Oh, totally. And a lot of these actors,
zero shame. Yeah.
a lot of these actors, I was surprised they hadn't even worked with each other from the get-go, because they were always in kind of similar movies. They would be in independent films, then they'd star in a movie that was obscure and premiered on HBO or Showtime. And especially with Virginia and Kiefer, I'm surprised they hadn't worked together before, because it's a similar kind
Agreed.
of career. Just actors who star in some, low budget stuff, some B movies, and then some cult, horror movies. And that's it. And then have a big giant TV comeback. And it's like, and the unknowns, I'll be honest, I knew about the show Chasing Life. It was like one of the few shows on ABC Family that everyone liked, but I did not know who Italia Ricci was, and I was like, is she related to Christina Ricci? No, just similar Italian name. And the Secret Service agent guy, again, LaMonica Garrett, he's just dynamite. I've seen him in so many other guest spots. He's especially on sitcoms and the crime shows, and Last Ship might have more screen time, but here he was just like, I've never seen a Secret Service agent portrayal like this before, where he has a Navy background, and he's
right.
The way they do the diagram is here's how we're gonna let the audience and the other characters that need to know how we're gonna do the sweep for the next Capitol attack, and while we're figuring out based on the blueprints of the previous attack, because terrorists do copycat, just like serial killer stuff.
Right.
And so that's why Mark Gordon, I think, was the right producer for this, because he knew how to hire a lot of the same Criminal Minds kind of people. Just like, hey, just get in there. You got to be able to do exposition and develop the characters at the same time without, being talking heads that just all look sexy and, are going to sleep together.
Well, let's talk about that. So like Emily Rhodes, or Italia Ricci, right?
Yeah.
She was basically he had been working with him since the very beginning when he became the HUD secretary, right? So when he became president, she was appointed as a special advisor, especially after with Aaron. I always felt like the position was above her. I felt like Aaron
kind of
deserved that spot, and I felt like because of what was going on, he was punished when she was just as fault as much as he was. And I always felt like it was like his favorite, as in like the favorite child. I always felt like it was portrayed in that way.
Yeah.
Like she could do no wrong. Even though when she fucked up royally, she could do no wrong.
Oh, totally. And they showed how vulnerable they were when, they get into a love triangle and, it doesn't work out. And then he finds out he was used by the gal he's currently with, and Emily has to take care for her mom in Florida, and then still decide if she can just come back and be a special advisor, even though the new campaign manager has been a total bitch to her and just scared her off. And like you say, I mean, Aaron kind of just can. It's just so funny how he's so good at just patting the president on the back and just saying, "Hey, it's time to not be a wimp anymore. You can do this. This is, this is nothing. You're just talking to all these children who you got to babysit for a minute, and yet,
like with Emily, it was more like, oh, you could do no wrong. You'll be just fine. Because she sugarcoated a lot, and I think that's why it was super important when
the people who give advice are their own worst enemy.
When the people were actually coming in, right? Because I felt like Aaron was being realistic with him. He was telling him this how it is, but when Lorraine came in, that helped out a lot, because Emily was basically sugarcoating while Lorraine's like, this is not true. You can't keep holding his hand like that.
Absolutely. And someone's going to take photos, and they are able to avoid it because, the attention's all on Seth, the communication director. He's, CJ of West Wing, equivalent, and having to try and not get into too many arguments like, who told you that story? Well, that's total load. That's not at all what the president's agenda is. and so, yeah, like you say, is like Emily is like Aaron gives the talking points, and Emily gives, the extra pat on the back and encouragement. And he gives Kirkman his soul, because otherwise the president really is just kind of the, sad, gentle giant. And it's like, yeah, like you say, is like they got to have a personal life. And of course they've grown to respect one another. So of course that leads to the next, one night stands. And then it becomes, to where it's like, okay, we got to take a big step back because.
And honestly, because of Lorraine, that's how Emily goes away, and now it's Marge that comes in. And that was a really big pivot for season 3 that was really needed, because that kept the credibility alive.
Absolutely, especially after Aaron becomes a suspect. Did he have something to do with the leak that became the Capitol attacks? And it's like, yeah, no, that was cool to have him. Did he or did he not have something to do with that? And if he did, was it unintentionally, like he gave a document to someone who caused one of the riots and attacks?
Okay, absolutely, right.
It was like,
and he needed to have someone that wasn't connected to that, and he really wasn't helping himself by keeping Emily around.
A red herring.
Yeah. Right, absolutely. And so, I appreciated that, because, to keep the credibility going and to keep the reality of it, the realisticness of it. I mean, he went through 3 different chief of staff and advisors.
He's never
in that time
had
frame.
to talk to a president like this. So at the same time, he feels like this is above his pay grade, his title, where he's like, okay, I got to tell you how to do everything from scratch. And at the same time, you got, I can't do this all for you. You better be taking some notes, Mr. President, because that's just true. You gotta do what you gotta do. He played off him really well, like Kiefer's other Latino co-star on 24, Carlos Bernard, who played Tony Almeida. He had that same kind of rapport, I felt.
I can see that, absolutely. And I want to go back. I want to kind of go into Madam Secretary, because I felt like her team, as much as I wasn't crazy about the novella portions of it, they did work together really well. I mean, you had BB Newirth.
Oh, they were funny. They were fucking funny.
They were great. I mean, you have her speechwriter.
I'll tell you what. Let's get into that. Okay, so introducing, for those who don't know what the hell this show is about, it has a CIA trained
former CIA analyst, and science professor,
right? Elizabeth Mccord, who becomes the Secretary of State when her mentor, played by William Sadler, in a rare good guy role, disappears under mysterious circumstances. She takes his job and works for President Dalton, played by Keith Carradine, and her husband, played by Tia Leone, the comedic actress, real life boyfriend Tim Daly of Wings fame. It's interesting how they make him a former Marine from Desert Storm and
Pilot.
pilot, and stars Beeb Newirth from Frasier and Cheers as the chief of staff. It has Zelchko Ivanek, also known as that guy, from Homicide, Oz, and 24. He always plays a snob, and this time he plays a helpful snob as the chief of staff later on.
He's great. Russell Jackson is just the character is amazing.
Yeah, and we ended up just calling him Russell anytime we see him on screen. Later on, we have policy advisor Kat, played by Sarah Ramirez, who is awesome.
Oh, what about Patina Miller, who is press coordinator?
And
she was in Hunger Games.
Oh, yes. She gave good speeches there. She gives good speeches here as Daisy. Yeah,
absolutely.
The press coordinator.
She was fantastic.
So, like we've said, both these shows are very appreciative in their own way. And as I was watching them, I finally got into West Wing after seeing bits of it, but never actually watching the show. I was more of a John Adam. I was more of a John.
You missed out, man.
I've seen it all. I didn't see it when it was on because I was a kid. I wouldn't have had the attention span. But
I watched it as an older teenager.
I was an older teen.
There's still a lot of stuff that I'm like squinting at it and it's going over my head because I watched Jag 2 and NCIS and all that good stuff, but as I got older, I kind of went back into it, and I was like, "Wow, this was actually really freaking amazing."
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. So, do you think West Wing is the best out of all these three, or just designated slightly out? Okay, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, because West Wing is the template.
Okay, look, if it wasn't for like West Wing, would have had
neither of these would have ever gone on the air.
None of these shows, including Dina Davis's unfortunately outlived one season of her show.
Because we talked in the past about Brain Dead. We talked about a bunch of other short-lived shows that were so good and just no one wanted to talk politics. But yeah, Commander-in-Chief was kind of what made this become a talking point. And
Commander-in-Chief became Madame Secretary. I mean, that's basically what happened. Like what it could have been. And Gina Davis is just so spectacular. And eventually, Gina Davis. That show didn't last, and now Tia Leone got Madame Secretary.
But similar kind of actors, though.
Faces.
Yeah,
we have familiar faces in there that have been in big movies or like Netflix films. So, for example, I have here. Let me go ahead and decline this phone call that came in. I apologize.
Oh, good.
So we have. What is her name? Her name is. Oh no, I lost it.
The show was produced by head writer Barbara Hall, who worked on shows like Judging Amy, Chicago Hope, and Jonah Marcadia. And she decided to, again, create the show for Morgan Freeman. That's right, the actor, and his producing co-partner, Laurie McCreary. He casted, Tia Leone, who he'd co-starred with as the president in Deep Impact. So there's the connection. And he appears constantly as one of the Supreme Court justices. And didn't you find it funny, though? I will say, I do like how they film the Joint Chiefs scenes, because they got Tony Plana, who was Ugly Betty's, the title character's father. He was on a bunch of other movies and shows. He's briefly on 24, but he's been in a lot of Oliver Stone movies, including Nixon and Salvador. Any Michael Mann show or miniseries, you've definitely seen him. I always light up when I see him because I just know he's just going to give an awesome speech and just characterize just in a way that no one could do. So if you haven't seen him in that or the Star Trek Deep Space Nine two-parter episode, you might vaguely remember he was also a Joint Chief on West Wing. And here, it was just fucking awesome just seeing him on here because he got to do just something different, just having the headset on while he's coordinating like some special forces mission from overseas. Especially when they do the nuclear reactor shutdown, that's just had me on the edge of my seat. But
absolutely, because that kind of created that suspense that they wanted to without it being completely all the time suspense.
Just out there. But I have to say, the actor Clifton Davis, who's a Broadway guy, and you know him as the one he's playing the director of national intelligence you know, Madam President. He kind of had a Morgan Freeman kind of feel to me, and I felt like that's kind of why he got cast. But he's done a lot of religious movies and guest spots, but he was the main character on Amen, so you might know him from that. So there you go, just a veteran actor, just working through and through. I thought he was.
What about Jane Atkinson, who played the Vice President, Teresa Hurst?
Wonderful actress.
Also in House of Cards, who played Secretary of State.
Yeah.
I mean, she was just in a lot of like the Rainmaker, Criminal Minds.
Yes, she was the main unit chief
and of course,
there.
House of Cards. That's where I first really paid attention to her. Was I saw House of Cards? And she
you never saw Free Willy?
Of course, the first.
She was the mom. Okay, well, she was the mom in the first two, but yeah.
Right, but
she's in this
I never put two and two together until not until I saw her. Okay, so when I saw her in Madame Secretary, I was like, wait a minute. I remember her from House of Cards, so that's kind of cool. She's playing the same kind of person. But then I showed the kids Free Willy, and I was like, oh my God, how did I not remember that? So yeah, that was funny.
Oh, totally. Especially when the NSA guy for President Dalton was Cotter Smith, who's been, it was also on a homicide with Zelchko Ivanek, and you might know is playing the president in X-Men 2. So there you go. But
that's right.
Yeah, no, that was a good catch with Jane Atkinson, just damn good actress. Just she was the it was so funny is like I saw her in that amazing documentary, that gal who was in that thing, and she's taught all of them had the same story, including hers. Like it's just so hard to find a role in Hollywood where you don't have to take clothes off or where you can play someone other than a mom or a bitch. And she was awesome, just describing how she got her roles on House of Cards and The Village and all this other stuff. And what's so funny is my dad's just hearing us do all these intense shows. He's not much of a TV guy anymore. He's just burnt out. He just hasn't seen a good movie in a while and just does sports now. And he was like, oh, where have I heard that voice before? I'm like, oh, you remember Karen, the Homeland gal who becomes, Bill's ex on. Where he's like, oh, okay, I think I put two and two together. We did plenty of Jack Bauer time with him. So he's like, yeah, that's when, he had an urge to watch every single episode and binge it. But yeah, she was awesome because she both respects and fears, and so there's a reason for why she's just so stuck up all the time, and just she'll even just say a sneaky thing and it just has no effect on Emily because Emily is just, and Tioloni's main character is just too patient and understanding a person. She has all that CIA training and just, again, she's just a gentle person.
I like how she just sits there and looks at her and squints at her like, really? That's what you're going to go with?
Yeah. And
like, I love that. She's like, you're not going to intimidate me, right? Like,
well, and this is kind of as HBO as it got. Is like anyone else would have just kind of face palmed or anything. But yeah, when someone leaves the room, she just kind of just goes, huh, funny. Just some shit like that. It's just like, well, didn't see that coming, or man, just thinking to herself, and we, the viewer, know she's thinking, man, that congressman, I got to do like, especially in the later seasons where she's got to put up with someone who is obviously just, a Mitch McConnell type. It just is like, ugh.
Oh,
I have to.
Mitch McConnell.
I have to shake this fat ass's hand and pretend that I agree with him for 20 minutes.
And that I like him, even though I don't. And that's a little bit of comedy, right? So you have people in here who are comedians, like Bebe Neuwirth, right? And then you have
Bebe Neuwirth was excellent. Oh my God.
Jeffrey Aaron, who played Matt Mahoney, had also done like 500 Days of Summer. He also had done.
Oh, which one was he?
Super Troopers. He was the speechwriter.
He was the speechwriter? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, he's married to Christine Hendricks. Who's fucking
like
hysterical.
A bombshell. She's like a 20 and he's like a 5.
He was hysterical. And it's so funny because I was seeing a bunch. Yeah. Okay. So anyone asking who does he play in Super Troopers? He's one of the kids who gets high at the start and gets pranked.
Right. A whole entire bag of mushrooms. And they're like, meow son, so that's the whole part. But he was also in Bubble Boy. He was in 500 Days of Summer. So he had a lot of comedy, and same thing with Bebe Neuwirth. So to get into a show like this that's actually kind of serious, Patina Miller had only done, serious stuff. So for her to come in to have that kind of comedy as well, was
She'd
actually
always
really
wanted to do it.
interesting.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Eric Stultz,
absolutely.
who plays Emily's like Peace Corps traveling, estranged and yet still somewhat close brother who reunites here. As it goes on, Eric Stultz, much like guest director, actor turned director Tate Donovan, helmed a bunch of episodes and eventually becoming a producer, helping them find their style. But yeah,
but check this out though. With Patina though, she had only done a lot of like musicals. She actually won a Best Actress in a musical. So to come from that to Hunger Games to Madam Secretary, it's kind of like they had a little bit of everything in there, and I really appreciated the way that they had a lot of different kinds of people in there too.
Was it filmed in New York? Because virtually everybody from Broadway,
I think so,
who's been on Person of Interest, Law and Order, and Sopranos, and even something like Power has been on this show. and so, yeah, I mean, Patina, I think, it is like she was making the rounds on daytime TV doing interviews for Tony stuff and Hunger Games, and it does make you wonder, who did she catch the eye of that just made them say, is like, give this gal
from musical to playing someone with authoritative figure in Hunger Games to Madame Secretary. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, I knew she was briefly on like a few other things, but yeah, like you say, most of her stuff, you can't find much of it except, it was just Broadway stuff. Eric Burgeon, who was in both the play and the movie version of Jersey Boys, is a really good singer. I've listened to some of his songs. He's like, man, he knows how to lounge sing. And what did you think of his part here as Blake?
I love him, and I think I really appreciated that in Madame Secretary, he wasn't pushing himself. He was happy just being her assistant. Basically, whatever she wanted, he was there for it. But she knew he was above his pay grade and that he had basically surpassed that. And I don't want to ruin it for people, but I feel like if you haven't seen it, that's on you. But I feel like this character, Blake, though, like towards the end of the season, the last couple seasons, she's like, look, this is what's going to go down. I'm not firing you, but you have 2 weeks, I think it was, to figure out what you want to do. And if you don't, she gave him a year. If you don't figure out what you want to do at the end of the year, you have 2 options. You can move on and find your place, or you no longer have a job. So it's kind of like, I'm not firing you, but you need to. She was pushing him to do more because she knew he could do more, because he has proven himself time and time again to do more than above his pay grade. But he still kept staying as this assistant. Not that there's anything wrong with being an assistant. I mean, I'm an assistant too, right? We all are. But I kind of felt like with him, he was very doting. He knew what she wanted, but he wasn't growing as a person. And she knew that. And she wasn't about to hold him back just because he was perfect at what he was doing. She wanted to push him out of his comfort zone. And that's a good boss. That's an amazing boss who sees their employee and seeing that, no, they could do more, but they don't want to leave me in a lurch. Well, it's okay. I can figure it out.
Oh, totally. Going back briefly to Daisy, I did forget portrayer Patina Miller was on Mercy Street, which was PBS's first original show, and that's an excellent show. But I forgot she was on there. I love
Mercy Street. That is so good. Absolutely. Good catch.
But, like you say, I mean, they should have totally focused more on Daisy and more on Blake instead of all the kids. The kids could have waited till the finale. They
I agree. I mean, I'm not saying don't put them in the show at all, because you need to kind of show, like it does like in a Survivor. They're there now. They're not. They're doing their own thing. They're there now. They're not.
The kids are there as long as they need to be. And I think
but it's like all these story arcs kind of started focusing on their kids versus what was actually going on behind the doors of being a Madame Secretary, because that's what the whole show was supposed to be about.
I don't know if some producer
branching off to her kids, and it's like, it's not that you shouldn't talk about them. I think that's super important.
They just can't carry a whole episode.
Take over the show. And they did. They took over the show. The last 2 or 3 seasons, it was all about them. And I feel like with Daisy and Mark and
they faded. They totally faded. And
even with Russell, I mean, that was super important. or what was,
he gets a heart
her
attack,
husband
and then
doing?
they could have just followed up with it, and it really only gets interesting when it takes ex-president Dalton just telling him, come on, man, give it your best shot. You served me. Your job is not over until she gets her second term, or her first term
Well,
as
even with
president.
Dalton, what happened to him and making that decision for him to step down? That was really hard, and that
was more interesting,
really, like,
because don't get me
yeah.
wrong, the show always starts off well, like every other CBS show, but CBS, I think they were worse than ABC. They clearly did not want it on there, and yet it was getting good ratings because they were replaying it on reruns on Sundays on their channel, as well as former UPN affiliates. And like you say, is like they would often start off just like any of their other SEAL team or SWAT shows, start off with a terrorist attack in another country, and then then you open up with the kids, and then you get to all the Dalton and interesting meat and potatoes that you came to see with the staff choosing their next strategy, and then you go back to the kids, and you let it go because Tim Daly is really hysterical, and Tia Leone is naturally comedic and knows how to mix in drama with the comedy. So
I really love Tia's and Tim's interaction. I even
totally.
like Dalton's interaction with her.
Yeah, because he's a dick, but he's a well-meaning dick.
Yeah, and he's really like, look, come on, you can't be doing this shit. Even when he's like advising her, and then when she's advising him, like, come on, sir, you can't be doing that shit, because they know each other for such a long time. They know there's no sugarcoating. It's only going to be facts, even if you don't like it. I mean, they're still going to be tactful about it, but there's no PC. There's no, you know what I mean? Like, it's all, look, this is what's going to go down if you do this. So how can we fix this? What is the solution? I don't like those solutions. So come up with more options,
I guarantee you, this show is going to probably start getting syndicated on Start TV, which shows a lot of female, kind of AIM programming, like Crossing Jordan and, The Closer and Rosalie Niles. Because I guess you could say, one critic did say this best. I forget who it was, but they're like, this is basically, and in fact, that's kind of what the show Tommy with Eddie Falco, which I thought was a cool police drama, which lasted only one season, a year after this was like, CBS just needed that kind of show that was their Judging Amy or Good Wife equivalent, and this was as close.
God, I miss Judging Amy. That was so good.
It was, and I think everyone should watch it, and just to play on TNT nonstop. But long story short, yeah, it's like it covered most layers, but most of its guest stars were kind of semi-known actors that I kind of knew from just watching every other blockbuster, like one of the Russian guys I had seen in one of the Die Hard movies, and I had bunch of other guys who was obviously meant to be a Putin, equivalent. I've seen him be on every other TNT show, just being a villain of the week. And so it's like, not as great as they got was that one ambassador. I forget what part of South America, but he was played by Carlos Bernard, Tony Almeida from 24. And he was awesome because he just lit up the scene. And that actor has actually started directing a lot of CBS shows. I'm surprised they didn't have him direct a few episodes here, but
at least come in, right? Yeah.
I mean, like you say, Designated and West Wing just really knew how to get some really good guest stars where it counted and give them some juicy role. And like you say, when it got the story with the kids, I mean, I wanted to know what happened to Daisy's one night stand, where it ended, where her partner just got a heart attack or something and died. And it was like, and then they just kind of just didn't want to talk about it. I'm like, well, you built it up a lot, and now you just abandoned it, and now I got to know about stupid Stevie or the stupid son.
Well, no, they did cover it, because if I remember
they did, but then they kind
of
stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they still followed
over
up.
Time. I mean, they can't. I mean, it was over time. It wasn't like all at once, because they kind of had to cover it from time to time, and how she was being a single mom, and then she goes and visits the father's mother. Basically the baby's grandma.
Hard to do
from
stuff,
his side of the family. But it was interesting how her and the speechwriter, what's his name again?
Oh yeah, they had an interesting dilemma.
They had an interesting relationship, and I think that because of their history and how he felt about her, they were like, well, I can just at least be here for you as a friend. And so I did appreciate that everyone was trying to help her, even with Blake, with the baby and things like that. Like they all had their own lives, but they were also counting on each other even at work to make it, because if someone suffers at home, they can't be good at their job.
Right. Now let's talk about the biggest asshole of this entire show, Ming Chen, Francis Chu's character, the Chinese counterpart, ambassador.
I loved him. Oh my god!
But he says such stuck-up, sexist things to her.
I agree, and she does do something to the other guy, right? But I think honestly, like, okay, hold on, let me just go backtrack real quick. So, like, Sebastian Arcelus, who plays Jay Whitman, who was her chief of staff and policy advisor. You know how he leads yes. and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
He had the right kind of geeky approach. Kids,
yeah. He got divorced, then they had to go do something else, and then he ends up coming back and forth within the show, which I thought was kind of cool to give way to other people, because I believe he was in another. Yes, he was in I believe he was in House of Cards. I could be wrong on that one.
Maybe,
but
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong. I know. He was in House of Cards. Okay. So.
Yeah. Now I know who you're talking about.
Memory serves right. Damn it.
Yeah. Jay was cool, especially when that storyline kind of came out of. They hinted at it, and you didn't know where it was going to come out of. But yeah, like you say, he had been on the ongoing Broadway show Wicked, and so again, all these guys are Broadway, and so they're ready to be an ensemble. But yeah, he was very interested in how he's like, I gotta choose either my messy life or my political life. No, I gotta step down now and deal with this so I can get custody of my kids and all that.
And that's a really good segue for him to continue doing what he was doing on the other show and the other things that he was doing.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just wanted to cover that real quick, because I really did like him in both House of Cards and Madame Secretary. And it's kind of cool that he did have a background in musicals and things like that, just like the other people that we've mentioned, like Blake and Daisy. In reality, that was their lives is doing that. Mm-hmm. So that was really neat. But what were we talking about?
Oh wait, tell me about how stuck up the Chinese council is.
Yes. Okay. So like for that, like, I loved his acting, and I think that
great actor. I'm just saying, this is man.
Yeah. No, he was a total dick, but I think that I feel that the way he was behaving and the way he was talking to her and the way that's more realistic than being super cordial. Because if you look at like Designated Survivor, you had a lot of people who were like very dishonest about their intentions. While in Madame Secretary is like, oh, who likes you and who doesn't like you, and who's out to get you and who you have to win over. And he knew that they needed him, so he was going to do whatever he could to get as much as he could out of her, and she knew what they were willing to give and what they weren't willing to give. And it was a lot of like, they spoke a lot in between the lines, and I really appreciated the writing for that, because if you look at politics, everything is read between the lines. And that was really neat, the going back and forth. Now, when she went to go meet, who was he? Was he Philippines? Was he Korean? Was he? I forget who he was. But
there was a bunch of countries they dealt with, especially during the tsunami.
She punches him in the face because he.
That's right. Yeah.
He grabbed her ass, I think it was, or he said something to her.
Yeah, it's a private conversation. It's like, this never happened, by the way. Otherwise,
yeah, because he always played like this boxer, I'm a badass type of guy, and then like he does something to her, and she just straight up she kicks his ass, and then they're like, this never happened, and the next day he's like, oh yeah, well, I was in a boxing match, that's how I got the split nose.
Yeah, he fears her
because a girl.
Because she knew she was already doing business with a total pig, and she's like, hey, anything for a U.S. ally, but at the same time, it's like, oh, the minute you put your hand on me, oh man, I'll fucking destroy you.
Yeah, because one thing is being sexist, one thing is being a dick, but one thing is like laying hands on something. And she reacted. She was a CIA analyst. She has training.
Yeah,
she
so we buy it.
Kill you if she wanted to. That was a whole plot on Madame Secretary that she was an assassin who could kill you in your sleep. That was like the whole thing. And she's like, whatever did that, so to speak, like.
And we kind you totally buy it because, yeah, like you say, the background and everything, and it's a private conversation. There's no telling what goes behind a closed door. And
absolutely. So I buy the fact that she would have done that. Yeah.
Compared to it technically can work, but they kind of force it on you when she has her husband, serve with the Defense of Intelligence Affairs or whatever, the DIA gal, played by Jill Hennessy from Crossing Jordan and Law and Order. That was cool, but that also felt like that was a different show. While Undesignated, when you get Maggie Q's FBI gal,
you believe her, you believe what she could do, absolutely.
Yeah, and she's working and it's a special task force prepped by the Joint Chiefs where they're getting a bunch of different, contractors mixed in with, other special forces people trying to, stop World War III. It's like, okay, cool. I'll bite it there because they want everyone who knows a bit about everything, so it's like, and
yeah, but how do you get a guy who used to be a Marine pilot who teaches at a war college to lead up a Secret Service
like
assassin?
They would want to lay low and not attract that much attention, from the media. That would be like, and if he died, it would be such a huge risk. Secret Service would totally be against that.
Yeah, and it's like they completely disregarded that. They're like, "Oh, we need more action, so let's give him something to do with that war college."
For the women to see this guy in action. Now, what do you think about Ellen Hill, the retired admiral turned NSA gal, Johanna Day? Blonde female.
Yeah.
She's been in a bunch of movies: Unbreakable, True Story, and The Post. So it's like, she was awesome, especially because she was just like, she was always kind of telling Elizabeth, "Yeah, you got to get your feet dirty. These men don't respect you just because you're in uniform."
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, you have to get dirty. You're absolutely right. And I felt like their interactions was, not only was she the first female chairwoman to join Chiefs of Staff, right?
Yeah.
And then she becomes National Security Advisor.
They'd both known each other somewhat because she had been, communicating
along
with
the
her
way.
on CIA
Absolutely. Yeah. And the cool thing about her, though, is that the actress, first of all, she has a lot of awards in her background. Let me see. I'm looking at here. She was also in a Rainmaker.
Yep.
Just like Jane was. She was in
Judging
movie
Amy.
Sweat. Yeah, she was. Oh goodness, what is this here? Oh, she was also in theater. How about that?
Everybody has a theater background on here. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, so for me, it's like, she's done so many really good things that I was actually surprised to see how many of them like cross each other's paths. So when I see her, I mean, she was also in Elementary, by the way.
Yes.
And Judging Amy. So it's really neat to see her come into the show and being an admiral, being National Security Advisor, chairwoman, Joint Chiefs of Staff. Like, you buy that. You buy that she has that authority and that she could do that job.
Totally. And unfortunately, there are some the main ones who are featured here are really good. And unfortunately, after a while, I kind of forget about all the other ones. I just remember the other bald guy, Mike Nifsky, who just doesn't respect any woman. And that was an interesting predicament. But yeah, after a while, I kind of forget about all the other ones. And I only remember the diplomats, which sucks because Designated has some cool ones, including one that basically tries to form a coup. Kind of freaking out, especially considering
that
the
was
news.
Really good. Yeah.
And then they kind of fade in the background, but they're kind of stand out somehow a little more because they're still telling the president, you might not want to do that. And here is like, they're cool, but they also, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a lesser Law and Order effect where after a while you forget everyone's name and you only remember the face. And it's like, I would have liked a little more characterization because she's really awesome with how she tells everyone to just go fuck themselves or
No, absolutely. And the thing is, you kind of need that, right? And then let's just talk about Jose Antonio Plana, or Tony Plana, who is a Cuban-American actor.
Yeah, Tony Plana, great actor, yeah.
Yeah, he was amazing in the show. And whether or not you saw him a lot, I know he was recurring, but he was a Joyce chief of staff,
Yeah.
and you bought his acting and you bought the character. You know, what he brought with it was his experience in acting.
He added a lot of
And-
small touches too, where it didn't feel
Yes.
like he was just looking at a teleprompter or a blue
No,
screen in front of
he
him.
actually you bought the act, you bought the part, because a lot of it was nuance and not like
Nuance is
I'm
the
just
best way
reading
to
from a
put it.
teleprompter. Yeah.
Now, tell me about Jose Zuniga.
Let's see. Jose Zuniga.
You
Is he
know
the
him.
one that plays
He's the one, a Latino
that one that hates
congressman.
her?
He
Yeah.
wants everything to just bring her down, and he does it in a way. I mean, again, he's been on all the
But-
other crime shows, but
But the cool thing that made me super happy
unusual ally, yeah.
when she asked him to be his VP.
Yeah, and I called
And
it.
honestly, I don't blame her for doing that. Not because
He
he's
had
Hispanic.
to.
It had nothing to do with that. He not only fought her tooth and nail for every single day that she was Madame Secretary, but he was the only one willing to speak up. He was the only one to tell it to her straight. He was the only one to keep her in line. I felt like without him,
He was the
she
main
probably-
barrier at the same time.
Yeah.
He kind of took it as a friendly
Absolutely.
thing, and whenever he got owned by her, it wasn't about having the final word. It was about, oh man, now I got to do something even more damaging. And so yeah, it's like, okay, let's just put this to rest, because it's like we got to get some shit done. And obviously that wouldn't happen in real life, but I do like how she kind of just says, she gives like 5 different options in front of him, and he likes all of them. He's just like, okay, so we are speaking the same language. We don't have to keep, I'm not
But she
intimidated
understood
by
where
it
he was coming from too. Like she knew
Well,
why
exactly.
he had to.
That's the
Yeah,
only.
but that's the thing is she knew where she stood with him, and he knew where she stood
Yeah.
with. They understood where each of them stood with each other. And honestly, if that's not the right president VP, I don't know what is. Because I don't know, with Designated Survivor, did you buy the VP?
I kind of did, because they really played up the Latino vote quite a lot there, and showed how.
But that's what was fucked up about it.
right,
It had
and
nothing
that's
to
why
do with what he could do.
that.
It
but
was they
that's
needed the Latino vote.
that's what made it more realistic for me. And this one, I felt, I bought how she got things done. I just did, again, like you said before, I didn't buy how they kind of talked how they ran, and you're like, not sure how they secured those votes, and really, the lack of
Yeah, I
detail
mean,
there compromised it there.
But I do appreciate that, even though they're like, whoa, why would she pick him? It had nothing to do with Latino vote, though. I mean, that's not going to hurt, but it was more about, hey, if we can show that we can work together, what can't we get done?
Oh, totally. And after
And
seeing
that,
all these,
to me, was super realistic, too, because I feel like with Designated Survivor, I could never see that pairing because it was bullshit. Now, that's realistic, too. A lot of people, like, they get him for not because of the kind of work they can do, but mostly because they want to get the Latino voting. But you
Yeah.
have to have a VP who also knows what they're doing. While I felt like
I think he had the
didn't really know
experience.
what he had the experience, but I didn't buy it as much as I did with Morejon and Madame President.
all right, fair enough. I mean, he definitely had more years on him than, Shore on Designated. So yeah, I mean, I kind of liked what Madam really got right, though, was with how they kind of dispatched some of the opponents. Is like, okay, I can see that happening. I liked her interactions with the ambassador to Yemen, played by Tim Guinea of Revolution, as well as the deputy secretary of state, played by William Allen Young from Babylon 5 and Code Black. Those are minor parts, but yeah, having her finally just make peace with Morejon, and then even the director of the CIA, played by Michael Gaston from Homeland, who always plays an asshole. That was interesting, but I like J.C. McKenzie. You might know him as playing that white supremacist on SVU, and Aaron Sorkin.
He was also a comedian.
Was he? I didn't know that. I know he was on
Yeah.
Dark Angel.
He was also on Dark Angel. Yep. He was in
Departed.
Departed, The Irishman, Wolf of Wall Street, Aviator. But
Trial of Chicago
like,
7.
Yeah, that's right.
Here, it was really interesting. I liked his portrayal as Sam, the Pennsylvania governor. And that's right. Michael Gaston is the CIA director on here, and he's also like disrespectful I think he's also a Pennsylvania governor who basically tries to stage a coup against the new president-elect undesignated. But he was an interesting character here, Mackenzie's character on Madam, because basically, Russell just basically blackmails him. He's like, yeah, you got a gene that would mean you're going to have Alzheimer's like a year into your presidency, and is like, you don't, he's already been told by, Mccord, Emily, don't do that. Don't play dirty. We want a clean campaign. And he does it anyway. It's like, this is the only way you're going to thank me later, because this is the only way I'm going to be able to get this asshole out of your hairs.
Absolutely.
This makes you want to be a politician. Just play dirty with all these guys and then put on the pretty face. It's like, politics. Not going to find any embarrassing foes in me, but I will tape every conversation and blackmail everyone.
Well, that's the thing, right? So, like, Jason McKenzie, who plays Sam Evans, he's basically doing the whole blackmail thing, right? But what you don't know is that he was also in House of Cards, and he also was in the OA. So it's interesting.
Here's his connection. A lot of these
actors, there's this connection, right?
But and there's a bigger connection. He's also in that guy who was in that thing.
Self-documentary, yeah, because he's always that guy in that thing. Dark Angel, I mean, you name it. You've seen him everywhere. And I want to apologize. I did say he was a comedian. No, he had done some a comedy shows, one thing here, but he was never like comedian.
He gets to play this guy up as a real character without making him seem unintentional parody. He did good here.
No, and I buy that he would do that. I buy what he was saying in Madame Secretary. I buy that he would do that. So the acting is absolutely amazing when it comes to what was going down and that time for this character to come in. Just kind of like Michael J. Fox coming in and Designated Survivor. It's that makes sense that he was playing that character for that part, for what was happening.
Oh yeah, and especially after even seeing him, how he had kind of already experienced with Sorkin, having worked on his brief cameo in The American President, and is like, yeah, and does a cool return to form. So I got to ask you the ultimate question: which of these shows does the better walk and talk formula? Which one does that usage better?
You know what? Walk and talk besides West Wing, I'm gonna have to say Madame Secretary, only because they have the West Wing pans of the walk and talk.
The pans are definitely better done. Yeah,
I feel like Designated Survivor, it's always one place. He's not doing a lot of walk and talk.
Yeah, they do. They don't half-ass it, but they do only half a scene, or sometimes they just knew they couldn't do it.
They do a lot of close-ups. They do a lot of sit-downs. They do a lot of stand-ups. They don't do a lot of walk and talk. Madame Secretary feels more like the West Wing walk and talk.
Yeah, because Madam was definitely had a lot of the same kind of just get you in the shot, especially when they introduced some other shocking thing, and like a congressperson comes up, Emily, I must talk to you, and it's like that. Cut to the credits, and Designated, I don't know if they just kept goofing up, or just felt like that would be too much info to unload, and they would just be distracting while they're talking and walking.
I felt like they didn't have the pans like they did
as much.
They wanted
to save it for the action scenes.
If we're doing walking and talking, the only time they did that was when he went to go see the aftermath in the first few episodes of the first season. After that, it became more deadpan, still sitting, standing, the war room. There wasn't a lot of walking, talking.
I know Frederick Toy worked on both that and Westworld, and I kind of got a sense that when he's working on both those,
very nice,
same kind of thing. He's like, I got to save the camera panning for the shocking moments for when it really needs it, and the rest can be kind of voyeuristic shots where it's like we're getting a private conversation that no one else should be listening in on.
Oh, absolutely agreed. And then with like Madame Secretary, you have that whole pan of
so I'll give you that
because everything is very racing, everything is happening, everything is going. There's a lot of walk and talk.
Because it's like Designated has got some better courtroom scenes, but
Agreed.
And Madam is like, it was more interesting just kind of talking about that, and just kind of not know what the Madam Secretary turned President is going to say, and just save the best for last. And I will say this: I did not expect Wentworth Miller. That's right, Schofield from Prison
He was
Break.
amazing,
To
and
be-
also Mr. Was it Mr. Cold, Captain Cold, CW?
Yeah, he was on Legends of Tomorrow, and I've never seen him in a serious role like this because he kind of took some time off to be a screenwriter, the actor, and here just being a Senator Hansen, just doing basically just another, just we're seeing this today still, just people on Capitol Hill who can't get anything done, and here he is just doing, oh, the poll was a fraud. I accuse you. Your campaign is all bogus.
Jacques.
Jacques. Schnell.
Exactly.
Oh God.
But it was cool him coming in and playing that douchey role, but at the same time,
And get a taste of his own medicine. Yeah. He's like,
but
I do
that
it for
was really
show.
cool.
and then just kind of just play it up like anyone would. Like the Young Turks say this best is like, we're tired of all this kabuki theater that these politicians like to do. It's like, that's just it.
Theater.
He wants to play to the camera. And they do a good job of
Yeah.
showing Russell from afar, and he says something,
Yeah.
and you don't know what they said. It's like, but Russell totally gave him an ultimatum. It's like, I need you to back the fuck off. Just,
Oh yeah, when he was like talking into his ear. Oh, that was so good.
yeah, and
Because
he's
Russell
like,
was so fucking scary, bro. Like he
Yeah.
was so scary.
He's
I
this
felt
short
like
man,
He
and you
shanked
don't
you in his sleep. Like I just felt like
yeah, verbally shanked you. And it's like he got away
He had a
with legal
sharp
murder.
tongue. Absolutely. But you know who he reminded me of, and not him specifically, but like
that
kind of-
person. I don't know.
That person. You know the guy who played Doug Happer in House of Cards?
Doug, and House
He
of Cards.
played basically
On House of Cards.
they played like he did everything for him, like all his dirty work.
Oh, Corey Stahl. Are you thinking of?
Douglas, I don't remember the actor's name, of course, but he
I
played
think
Douglas
that's-
Hamper, and he was fantastic, and I felt like he was almost that scary.
I think
like,
that's who it is. Let me look it up.
yeah, go for it. But I feel like he was just as scary. Like I don't think he would like commit murder for anybody, but I feel like he was that loyal and getting shit done, and he actually did care, and he actually did
Right.
want things to
Yep.
happen.
Oh, different one. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, Michael Kelly. Love that dude. I actually worked with him on a little scene miniseries when I was an extra.
Very cool.
It was a long road home. We filmed it in outside of Austin, Texas. He was very cool, just hanging out with everybody, the makeup artists and everything, just casual conversation. Yeah, he's been in everything, including the Criminal Minds spinoff and Jack Ryan. And yeah, he's really good at just, I mean, ever since the Dawn of the Dead remake, anytime I see him in a movie, he is really good at just, I mean, I'm actually really surprised he wasn't on one of these shows. He probably wanted a step away from those kinds of roles. He was really good at just, I mean, he and all these actors are really good at, it's like they're definitely cast because you know they can hide something and complement the suspense of the whole shows, because you need that. You need someone who's got a good day, bad day, can express, character errors and judgment calls, and then do the whole, are they an ally or are they gonna, stab you in the back for their own political gain? And this is, yeah, House of Cards definitely kind of showed that the network TVs wanted some of that Netflix money to have, some kind of cool thing. And they did good by having Paul Redford contribute a lot of the same ideas and speeches that he did on West Wing. But yeah, all the other writers did pretty good job too. But yeah, like you say, Designated, you really can't tell who wrote what. It's just a bunch of minds
So flawless.
organizing.
So flawless.
And then, yeah, Madam is like, okay, this is the person writing the comedy episode. This is the person writing the foreign affairs episode. This is the one writing the World War III
Agreed.
preventing episode. And yeah, so it's like, yeah, they're all trying to make, either way, I think we all recommend both shows highly because, I mean, Madam, I was late to the game on, and I just binged on Netflix, and Designated, I was
there from the beginning.
it-
I
it-
was there like when I saw Netflix pick it up. I was like, whoop, whoop.
I
so
was
happy.
like, thank you, because season 2 was so underrated. It just raised the bar.
It just stopped, and I'm like, no, it's so
Yeah.
good.
You end and someone gets shot by a sniper rifle, and you're like, just like season 1, but they did it in a different scenario, and then
Yeah, agreed.
Pearson is good, and So get this. Everyone's complaining a lot of the loose ends weren't tied up on season 3. I felt like they did their best. You kind of know who's going to jail for doing some illegal stuff for Kirkman's campaign, and then you know some other stuff. Obviously, some of our heroes don't make it because who help out in the FBI and CIA, but that kind of made me want to finish it even faster because I was cool with that because it's like, okay, now I know. Now it's not only you got 2 storylines going. Will the re-election campaign be successful, and will they avenge the fallen agent? You know.
Well, the same with Madame Secretary. It was only proper that it went that way, that she became Madame President.
Had to.
Even through the campaign and everything like that. I think it was only fair because that was the only way was out. That was the only way out. Either
you need some bloodshed.
Yeah, either you're gonna go out or you're gonna go out the way you want to.
Go along.
Go along. Go along. And then when Dalton's like, "Hey, you should definitely do this," and he's like, "You want to? I don't know why."
They hinted at it 2 seasons in a row, and
did.
we're like, "It's inevitable." There's nowhere else for her to go. Otherwise, her career just ends, and she just runs for like a local mayor or senator position, and
that was a natural evolution.
That'd be a step down.
I know, Designated Survivor. We're not gonna ruin it. But it's on Netflix, so go watch it.
Yeah, both the shows are not on Netflix still. I think I saw briefly that Madam was on Paramount Plus, and I was surprised. I was like, "Why the fuck was this not on CBS when it first launched and the show was still on?"
I agree.
They fucked the show. It was always on, and yet it's like they just wanted syndication money. They only wanted to do stuff that dealt with all their action, crime, and sitcom shows. I'm like, yeah, but this is something. Okay, so Designated is a really intense show. It's definitely not as lowbrow as 24 eventually gets.
Okay.
It's a little intense and mature, so definitely don't show to people under 15 or 16. Madam, you could show to everyone, but as a casual family show. But unfortunately, no, in today's environment, kids aren't going to get into it. And then they're going to want to just
They're not going to get any of this information. Like,
no.
Just like West Wing, Madam Secretary, Designated Survivor, Commander-in-Chief, they're not going to
Brain
get
Dead,
any of it. Especially Brain Dead. That's going to go way over their heads.
Designated might appeal to the 24 crowd, though, I think. I had
because of Jack Bauer. I get that,
there's
but
that.
honestly, it's so political.
But also Nikita.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a lot of people
it's
who...
It's not that you can't follow the people. I mean, I'm all for it, but I just don't think that, if my teenagers would sit down and watch it, they probably would fall asleep.
Oh, totally. Especially for West Wing and Madam, just kids don't have that mentality unless they are interested in just seeing a cool drama. If they're older, I think they'll like West Wing. I think, though, since Designated had kind of some of the same style as Criminal Minds, it might have appealed even for those who hate politics. Because I did see some people who were like, I can't stand politics, but I like how this guy's an independent president and all that shit. So I don't know. I think it made enough people happy, and because they took advantage of the Netflix rating, they were able to be more blunt and get away with more stuff. So that was cool. God, especially when we're seeing some of those other guys who are playing dirty ball.
Oh, and you're like, this is more realistic than I would want it to be.
Totally. Shit, what was I gonna look up? I totally forgot what I was gonna do. So yeah, they're both on Netflix. They've both been around for a while. Well, hell, if you even just go on Google, you'll see just high ratings, user scores as well. Designated even got remade in like South Korea, and that's
really
on Netflix as well, called 60 Days. So yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I'm sure I will. I just got 500 other things to finish.
No, not us. We don't have 1,000 shows we're watching and binging on. What are you talking about?
Everybody does.
Yeah, but our superhero shows are cool, though.
Well, mine are too. What's wrong?
I wouldn't go that far. Calm down.
What's wrong with Bosch?
Mr. Grey's Anatomy.
I'm not a fan of that. I was joking. I'm saying someone who clearly watches this because it's been on 18 plus years, and I don't know who.
How?
I don't
The
know.
show. I'm sorry for those who like it, but seriously,
No,
how?
I don't do shit like that.
I don't understand.
I do St. Elsewhere in Chicago Up. I don't do shit like that where it's just like who will fall in love with who. I'm like, yeah, no thank you. Hardly recommended. Both 5-star
Very highly
shows.
recommended. Go watch it.
Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you for being on this episode, Dina.
always a pleasure.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time.
Ah,
Tangents galore.
yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah,
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
ah, ah,
all
ah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we're going to end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
doll popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
could you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our queue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zemenov. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zemenov, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zemenov, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zemenov.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything. Pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant. 2 podcasts. One is the Macgyver Podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old Podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the Macgyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of Macgyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
Hi there. It's Heather from the Watching Netflix Without You podcast. Did you know that there are over 1,200 Netflix original feature films and documentaries? And that number is only growing. So I've made it my mission to watch as many as I possibly can. Then, with a delightful guest or guests, disclaimer, more often than not my brother Ryan, we spend an episode rating, reviewing, and discussing a film at length. The first half of every episode is spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet, and in the second half, after a very clear spoiler warning, we dive into it. And that's really about it. You can listen to Watching Netflix Without You on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and more.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.